The sirens screamed across Memorial Park like banshees, drowning out the cheers that had echoed just moments before. Runners scattered in every direction, their colorful racing bibs fluttering like confetti in a hurricane. News cameras swiveled frantically, catching glimpses of panic-stricken faces as the bomb squad stormed toward the finish line in full tactical gear. The annual Hope Springs charity race, which had brought together thousands of supporters and disabled athletes from across the nation, had transformed from celebration into chaos in the span of 3 devastating minutes. Detective Sarah Martinez pressed her earpiece tighter against her head, struggling to hear the dispatcher over the cacophony. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she watched paramedics wheel away an elderly volunteer who had collapsed from the shock. The morning sun, which had painted everything in golden hues just an hour earlier, now seemed harsh and unforgiving as it illuminated the scattered water bottles, abandoned wheelchairs, and torn banners that littered the racecourse. "All units, we have a confirmed threat at Memorial Park," crackled the radio. "Caller reported a dirty bomb hidden near the finish line. Evacuate all civilians immediately." Sarah's stomach twisted. She had volunteered her Saturday morning to support this event, watching her 8-year-old nephew Marcus train for months to compete in the youth wheelchair division. Now she found herself coordinating the largest emergency response the city had seen in decades. 3 hours earlier, the park had buzzed with anticipation and hope. Marcus Rodriguez adjusted his racing gloves one final time, his dark eyes gleaming with determination, despite the cerebral palsy that affected his left side. His specialized racing wheelchair, donated by the community after a year-long fundraising campaign, gleamed in the morning light. The bright blue frame matched his racing jersey, emblazoned with the words, "Team Unstoppable." "Remember what we practiced," his coach, Elena Santos, said as she knelt beside his chair. "Keep your rhythm steady for the first mile, then give everything you've got in the final stretch." Marcus nodded, his face serious beyond his years. "I'm going to make everyone proud today. Coach Elena, especially the kids who can't be here." Elena's throat tightened. This race meant everything to their community. The proceeds would fund adaptive sports equipment for dozens of children with disabilities, many of whom had been waiting years for their chance to compete. She had seen firsthand how sports transformed these kids, giving them confidence, friendship, and dreams they never knew they could pursue. Nearby, volunteers hustled to set up the final water stations. The event had grown exponentially since its modest beginnings 5 years ago. What started as a local 5K had blossomed into a nationally recognized event, drawing professional athletes, celebrities, and media coverage. This year's race boasted over 3,000 participants, with live television coverage and corporate sponsors whose banners lined the course. Margaret Thompson, the race director, surveyed the scene with satisfaction. Her graying hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her Hope Springs charity t-shirt was already damp with perspiration from the morning's preparations. She had dedicated the last decade of her life to this cause, after her own daughter Emma was born with spina bifida. "The weather's perfect. Registration numbers exceeded our projections, and Channel 7 wants to do a live interview at the finish line," she told her assistant, beaming. "This could be our biggest year yet." What Margaret didn't notice was the woman standing near the parking lot, her face twisted with barely contained rage. Karen Whitfield clutched her phone with white knuckles, her expensive manicure digging into the designer case. Her own charity event, a wine-tasting fundraiser held the previous weekend at the country club, had raised barely a quarter of what this simple race would generate in a single morning. Karen had spent months planning her event, calling in favors from her social circle, hiring a professional caterer, and even securing a minor local celebrity as the host. Yet her fundraiser had attracted fewer than 50 attendees, raising a paltry $12,000 for her chosen cause, renovating the country club's tennis courts to make them more accessible. The irony was lost on her that the tennis court project would primarily benefit wealthy, able-bodied members, while the charity race directly funded equipment for disadvantaged children. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Karen muttered to herself, watching volunteers direct traffic with infectious enthusiasm. How is some poverty race getting more attention than a sophisticated event? I had champagne flutes from Tiffany's, for crying out loud. At 8:30 sharp, the starting horn echoed across the park. The crowd of runners surged forward like a colorful wave, with the wheelchair participants leading the pack. Marcus found his rhythm immediately, his powerful arms propelling him forward with precision. Behind him, runners of all ages and abilities followed, many wearing shirts honoring loved ones with disabilities. Karen watched from her vantage point near the refreshment tent, her resentment building with each passing minute. The local news crew was interviewing participants, collecting heartwarming stories about overcoming adversity and community support. A local business owner explained how the race had inspired him to hire 3 employees with disabilities. A grandmother displayed a photo of her grandson, who had died from muscular dystrophy, but whose memory lived on through this event. "Excuse me, ma'am." A young reporter approached Karen with a microphone. "Would you like to share why you're supporting today's race?" Karen's face flushed. I think it's wonderful that people are so generous. But there are many important causes that deserve attention. Some of us work very hard to support meaningful community improvements that get overlooked." The reporter's smile faltered slightly. "Of course. Well, thank you for coming out today." As the reporter moved away, Karen's humiliation crystallized into something darker. She pulled out her phone and began scrolling through social media, watching as posts about the charity race multiplied exponentially. The hashtag #HopeSpringsTogether was trending locally, with hundreds of photos and videos celebrating the participants. Her own event's hashtag, #JosherEleganceForAccess, had generated exactly 7 posts, most from her own family members. By 9:15, Marcus was leading the youth wheelchair division by a comfortable margin. His training had paid off, and the crowds lining the course shouted his name with growing excitement. Elena jogged alongside the course, tracking his splits and calling out encouragement. "You're on pace for a personal record," she shouted as he passed the 2-mile marker. "Stay strong." Marcus grinned, his face glowing with exertion and joy. This was the moment he had dreamed about for months. Every early morning practice session, every mile of training, every moment of doubt had led to this. He could see the finish line banner in the distance, could imagine crossing it in first place, could picture the pride on his Aunt Sarah's face. Margaret Thompson stood at the finish line, checking her watch and coordinating with the timing crew. The professional runners were expected to finish within the next few minutes, but she found herself most excited about the youth participants. Their determination and courage inspired everyone who witnessed their races. "The 10-year-old in the blue chair is absolutely flying," commented Jerry Walsh, the head timekeeper. "Kid's got serious talent." Margaret nodded, wiping away a tear. "That's Marcus Rodriguez. His Aunt Sarah is one of our volunteers. He's been training with Elena Santos for 2 years, ever since his accident. The whole community rallied to get him that racing chair." Meanwhile, Karen had retreated to her BMW, parked at the far edge of the lot. Her hands shook as she stared at her phone, watching the race's live stream accumulate thousands of views. The comment section overflowed with praise and donations, with viewers from across the country pledging support. Something snapped inside her mind, a cold calculation that would haunt her for the rest of her life. If she couldn't have the spotlight, then no one would. If her event couldn't succeed, then this one shouldn't either. She dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? Karen disguised her voice, speaking in a harsh whisper. There's a bomb at Memorial Park. The charity race. Someone planted a dirty bomb near the finish line. You need to evacuate everyone now. Ma'am, can you repeat that? Did you say there's a bomb? Yes, a dirty bomb. I saw suspicious people near the finish line this morning. They left something behind. Middle Eastern men acting nervous. Please, you have to stop the race before people get hurt. The dispatcher's training kicked in immediately. Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line. Can you tell me your location? Karen hung up and immediately drove away, her heart pounding with adrenaline and terror at what she had done. But the damage was already in motion. The first police cars arrived at Memorial Park within 4 minutes, their sirens causing confusion among the spectators. Detective Sarah Martinez, who had been cheering for Marcus near the halfway point, felt her phone buzz with an emergency alert. All available units respond to Memorial Park. Possible bomb threat. Initiate immediate evacuation protocols. Sarah's world tilted. This was her nephew's race, her day off, her moment of pride and joy. Now she was suddenly in charge of evacuating thousands of people, including children with disabilities who couldn't move quickly or easily. Everyone needs to move away from the course immediately, she shouted through a borrowed megaphone. This is not a drill. Please remain calm and follow the officer's directions. The confusion was immediate and heartbreaking. Marcus, still in the lead with less than half a mile to go, looked around in bewilderment as officials on motorcycles began stopping the runners. His dreams crumbled in real time as a police officer gently but firmly guided his wheelchair away from the course. But I was winning, he said, his voice breaking. I trained so hard. Why are we stopping? Elena Santos appeared at his side, her own heart breaking as she watched the boy's confusion turn to devastation. There's been some kind of emergency. Marcus, it's not your fault. You were amazing out there. Across the park, chaos erupted as families tried to locate each other in the crowd. The bomb squad arrived in their intimidating gear, their presence turning fear into panic. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting the unfolding crisis to viewers across the nation. Margaret Thompson stood in the command center that had been hastily established in the park's administration building, watching her life's work dissolve before her eyes. The evacuation was proceeding, but slowly. Many of the participants required assistance, and the fear in their eyes was devastating to witness. What exactly did the caller say? She asked the FBI agent who had taken charge of the scene. Agent Patricia Collins consulted her notes. Anonymous female caller reported seeing suspicious individuals plant a dirty bomb near the finish line, claimed to have witnessed Middle Eastern men acting nervous earlier this morning. Margaret's stomach twisted. The description felt wrong, prejudiced, and deliberately inflammatory. Her event had always welcomed people of all backgrounds, and she couldn't recall seeing anyone matching that description acting suspiciously. How long until we know if there's actually a device? She asked. The bomb squad is conducting a thorough sweep. Could be several hours. Several hours. Margaret realized with growing horror that the race was over, regardless of what they found. The media coverage would focus on the threat, not the cause. Corporate sponsors would distance themselves from the controversy. Years of community building would be undone in a single morning. By noon, the bomb squad had completed their initial sweep of the finish line area. Agent Collins gathered the race organizers and city officials for an update, her expression grim. "We found no explosive devices, no suspicious packages, and no evidence of any threat. However, we're expanding the search to include the entire park." Detective Sarah Martinez felt a mixture of relief and growing suspicion. "Agent Collins, I've been thinking about the caller's description. This community is incredibly diverse, and I've never experienced any tension or suspicious behavior at these events. Is it possible this was a false report?" Collins nodded slowly. "We're considering that possibility. The 911 call is being analyzed, and we're reviewing security footage from the morning. If this was a hoax, whoever made that call will face federal charges." Meanwhile, the aftermath was already devastating. The local news had picked up the story, broadcasting dramatic footage of the evacuation and the bomb squad's arrival. National outlets began running segments about terrorism threats at charity events. Social media exploded with speculation and misinformation. Marcus sat in his aunt's car, still wearing his racing bib, tears streaming down his cheeks. Will we ever get to finish the race? Aunt Sarah. Sarah held him tightly, her own emotions raw. I don't know. Baby. I hope so. The investigation moved quickly once the FBI's technical team analyzed the 911 call. The voice stress analysis revealed deception, and the cellular tower data pinpointed the call's origin to a location that had moved away from the park immediately after the call was placed. Agent Collins worked through the weekend, cross-referencing the tower data with traffic cameras and parking records. The breakthrough came when they identified Karen Whitfield's BMW leaving the park at the exact time the call was made. On Monday morning, Collins and Detective Martinez stood on Karen's doorstep, armed with a search warrant and mounting evidence. Karen answered the door in her silk robe, her face immediately betraying her guilt. Karen Whitfield. Collins showed her badge. FBI, we need to speak with you about Saturday's incident at Memorial Park. Karen's legs nearly gave out. I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't even there. Ma'am, we have cellular records showing a 911 call was placed from your phone number at 9:23 a.m. on Saturday morning, originating from Memorial Park. We also have traffic camera footage of your vehicle leaving the scene immediately after the call. The game was up, and Karen knew it. But instead of showing remorse, her privileged upbringing kicked in with full force. This is harassment. Do you have any idea who my husband is? Who my family is? I want my lawyer. The arrest made national headlines within hours. Wealthy socialite accused of false bomb threat at disabled children's charity race appeared on news websites across the country. The story had every element that captured public attention: privilege versus vulnerability, jealousy versus community spirit, and the shocking betrayal of children with disabilities. Karen's mugshot, showing her disheveled hair and smeared makeup, went viral instantly. Social media users compared photos of her elegant wine-tasting event with images of Marcus and other young athletes who had trained for months only to have their dreams shattered by her selfish act. The details of the case, revealed during her arraignment, shocked even seasoned observers. Federal prosecutor James Chen laid out the evidence methodically, painting a picture of calculated cruelty motivated by petty jealousy. The defendant made a deliberate choice to terrorize thousands of people, including disabled children, because she was envious of their fundraising success. Chen told the packed courtroom. Her actions caused an estimated $2.3 million in damages, traumatized an entire community, and destroyed an event that took years to build. Karen's high-powered defense attorney tried to frame the incident as a momentary lapse in judgment, but the evidence was overwhelming. Phone records, traffic cameras, and voice analysis all pointed to premeditated malice rather than spontaneous mistake. The community response was swift and powerful. Within days of Karen's arrest, a crowdfunding campaign to restore the charity race raised over $500,000. Local businesses that had initially backed away in fear now pledged unprecedented support. The story of Marcus and the other young athletes touched hearts across the nation, generating donations from all 50 states. Margaret Thompson found herself overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Her phone rang constantly with offers of sponsorship, venue donations, and volunteer assistance. The tragedy had inadvertently amplified their message beyond anything they could have achieved through normal means. "It's incredible and heartbreaking at the same time," she told a reporter from the Washington Post. "We're grateful for the support, but we can't forget that children who trained for months never got to cross the finish line. That's something money can't fix." Marcus had become the unofficial face of the campaign, his story of interrupted dreams resonating with people everywhere. But the attention also brought challenges. He struggled with nightmares about bombs and sirens, required counseling to process the trauma, and found it difficult to return to training. "I keep thinking maybe I wasn't good enough," he confided to Elena during a particularly difficult session. "Maybe that's why the race got stopped." Elena knelt beside his chair, her voice fierce with conviction. "Marcus Rodriguez, you listen to me. You were leading that race. You were flying. What happened had nothing to do with you, and everything to do with one person's terrible choices. Don't you dare let her steal your confidence along with your moment." Karen's trial began 3 months later, drawing national media attention and protesters from across the political spectrum. The courtroom was packed with members of the disability community, law enforcement officials, and concerned citizens who saw the case as representing something larger than one woman's jealousy. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Agent Collins testified about the investigation, playing the 911 recording that had launched the crisis. The jury listened in stunned silence as Karen's disguised voice accused innocent people of terrorism based on nothing but racial profiling and spite. Detective Sarah Martinez took the stand to describe the evacuation, her voice breaking as she recounted Marcus's confusion and the panic she witnessed among the families. Margaret Thompson testified about the years of work that had gone into building the event and the lasting damage to the community's trust. But it was Marcus himself who delivered the most powerful testimony. Despite his young age, the judge allowed him to speak about the impact of Karen's actions on his life and dreams. Wearing his blue Team Unstoppable jersey, he wheeled himself to the witness stand with quiet dignity. "I trained every day for 2 years," he said, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "My whole community helped me get my racing chair. My coach Elena never missed a practice. My Aunt Sarah took time off work to cheer for me. I was winning. And then it all just stopped." He paused, looking directly at Karen for the first time. "I don't understand why someone would want to hurt kids like me. We weren't hurting anyone. We were just trying to do something good." Karen's defense team had prepared her to show remorse, to apologize convincingly, to demonstrate that she understood the magnitude of her actions. But when given the opportunity to address the court, her privilege and entitlement emerged once again. "I never intended for anyone to get hurt," she said, her voice lacking genuine emotion. "It was a momentary mistake, and I think the punishment is far exceeding the crime. My family has already suffered tremendously from the media attention and public shaming." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, The foreman stood to read their verdict with unmistakable solemnity. On the charge of making false statements involving domestic terrorism, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit domestic terrorism, we find the defendant guilty. On the charges of civil rights violations, we find the defendant guilty on all counts. Karen's face went white as the reality hit her. The judge set sentencing for the following month, but the federal guidelines were clear she faced a minimum of 5 years in prison, with the possibility of much more. Outside the courthouse, Margaret Thompson addressed the crowd of supporters and media. Justice has been served today, but our work is far from over. This case has shown us both the worst and best of humanity. One person's hatred and jealousy caused tremendous pain, but thousands of people responded with love, support, and determination to rebuild something even stronger. Karen's sentencing hearing drew an even larger crowd than her trial. Federal Judge Maria Santos had reviewed hundreds of letters from community members, disability advocates, and law enforcement officials, all describing the lasting impact of Karen's actions. Mrs. Whitfield, Judge Santos began, her voice carrying the weight of justice. You have been convicted of some of the most serious crimes in our legal system. Your actions terrorized thousands of innocent people, including children with disabilities who had done nothing but try to participate in their community. The judge paused, reviewing her notes. The evidence shows this was not a momentary lapse in judgment, but a calculated act of cruelty motivated by jealousy and prejudice. You used the specter of terrorism to destroy something beautiful, and you specifically targeted vulnerable children to satisfy your own ego. Karen sat stone-faced, her expensive legal team flanking her as the judge continued. The court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $2.3 million to cover the damages caused by your actions. Additionally, you are banned from participating in any charitable events or fundraising activities for the duration of your probation. As the bailiff led Karen away in handcuffs, Margaret Thompson felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, but it couldn't undo the trauma or restore the innocence that had been lost. 1 year later, Memorial Park buzzed with activity once again. The second annual Hope Springs charity race had drawn over 5,000 participants, making it one of the largest charity running events in the state's history. Corporate sponsors lined up to support the cause, and media coverage focused on stories of resilience and community triumph. Marcus stood at the starting line in a brand new racing chair, this one painted gold to match his Team Unstoppable champion jersey. The year of therapy and training had rebuilt his confidence, and he was stronger than ever. But more importantly, he had become a symbol of perseverance that inspired people far beyond his small community. "You ready for this?" Elena asked, making final adjustments to his equipment. Marcus grinned, his face radiant with determination and joy. "I've been ready for a year. Coach Elena, let's finish what we started." Detective Sarah Martinez stood in the crowd, wearing her Team Unstoppable t-shirt and fighting back tears of pride. The investigation and trial had been difficult, but watching her nephew prepare to compete again made every moment worthwhile. Margaret Thompson took the microphone at the starting line, addressing the massive crowd of participants and supporters. Last year, someone tried to stop us with fear and hatred. Today, we prove that community, love, and determination are always stronger than the worst impulses of human nature. The starting horn echoed across the park, and Marcus shot forward with the power and grace of a true champion. This time, nothing would stop him from crossing the finish line. This time, the story would end exactly as it was meant to, with triumph, community, and the unshakable belief that hope springs eternal in the human heart. As he raced toward his destiny, the crowds cheered not just for Marcus, but for every person who refuses to let hatred win, for every community that rebuilds after tragedy, and for every child who dares to dream of crossing the finish line despite the obstacles in their path. The Hope Springs charity race had become more than an event. It had become a testament to the power of resilience, the strength of community, and the unbreakable spirit of those who choose love over hate, inclusion over prejudice, and hope over fear. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.